Guys, so getting started with cleaning that precision bolt gun, you're going to need a couple things. First thing is, today we're going to be cleaning a 6.5. You're going to want a good quality cleaning rod, okay? So there's a couple manufacturers of these. I like the Tipton's. You don't even hear that. It's on ball bearings. Also, Dewey makes a really good rod. I have a couple of those. I do like this, though. It's a carbon fiber shaft, and then you've got your threaded inserts here. So for whatever caliber, you're going to need to make sure you have the proper jag for it, okay? And the jag looks like that, and you can see it's got a sharp point on it. That's for the cleaning patch. Tipton also makes this jag set like this. You can get them in brass or these bronze like this. Sometimes it'll give you false indicators if you're trying to clean some copper, because it will react with something that's like if you're using sweets or you know, Bortec or something like that. But you definitely want a set of jags, that cleaning rod, and then a bore guide, some type of bore guide, so that you're not poking the face of that chamber and doing any damage. Because one of the things about cleaning a really expensive rifle is you don't want to just be poking that cleaning rod in there and basically destroying your barrel, okay? So that chamber and all that's very important. You're also going to want a clean or a new type of bronze brush. You want everything to be bronze on it, okay? I don't like the ones that are aluminum. Here's one from Pro Shot. I probably paid too much for it. A $2.95. So this is for 6.5 Creedmoor. You're also going to want the proper size patches. So here's something from Pro Shot. It's made for 6.5 all the way up to 270. And then you're going to want some cleaning agents. So I use a squirt bottle with Hoppy's number 9. It's been around forever. I've never had any adverse effects with it. It's good for removing carbon, but not really so good for removing any copper fouling. One of the things I use right now is called Bortec CU3 or CU plus 3. I don't have the bottle to show you because I put them in little squirt bottles like this, and then I throw out the big bottle. But that is going to help remove that copper fouling. But what we're trying to do here is keep from laying down a lot of copper in that barrel, okay? You want to keep that clean, because if you can do that in the beginning and you can get it broken in, you're less likely to start building up copper layers on top of each other, and that's going to degrade your accuracy. As far as my precision bolt guns, I usually wait about 100 rounds or so. That's when I normally start to see accuracy start to degrade. So let's say you have a gun that shoots really, really tight groups at 100 yards, and then, you know, 100 rounds later, you start to see it open up a little bit and get a little larger with your groupings. You probably have a problem with copper fouling. So you want to get all that copper out of there. Just think of it this way. Fresh pavement, you take your car, you do a burnout. You laid a little track of rubber in there. If you keep doing that, I don't know if you guys have ever had the occasion to go to a drag strip or anything, and you just literally, there's a thick layer of rubber there for everybody doing their burnouts. You don't want that to build up in the barrel. That's really going to kill that accuracy. All right, guys, so this is the lands and grooves in this 6.5 before we get started cleaning. Now, you can see some copper fouling in there on top of the lands themselves. And as I pull back, what I want you to notice is there's no rust or anything like that in the actual chamber itself. And that's what I'm looking for. You don't need a bore scope or anything, but what will happen is if you neglect this right here is where the sidewall of the case goes, you're going to have sticky cases. And it's going to be hard to extract, even for a bolt gun. And so, like I said, this is before we get started. And then when we get done cleaning, we'll compare it a little bit in order to be able to remove the bolts. And I'm removing the bolts. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that bore guide and we're going to insert it into the chamber like this. And you'll notice I can't get it down here. What I want to do is loosen that screw so that I can get it just in front of there, lock it, and that way this works almost like a bolt, but I'm seated all the way up against the face of that chamber to be able to guide that rod through there with that patch. All right, so now we're taking that bore guide that was adjusted, we're going to place it in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tip of this jag, and I'm going to take a cleaning patch, and the cleaning patch, excuse me for just a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to center it over the top of this jag and pop a hole in it, just like that. Now at that point, I usually use my squirt bottle. I always start off with Hoppy's number 9. It kind of softens everything up, removes the copper, or the carbon from it. So then what I'm going to do is with nice straight press, I'm just going to push straight out towards the end. Now this rifle had 40 rounds on it before we cleaned it, but this is getting ready for a match, so there's some copper fouling there. So you'll see that it's not that black, but like I said, this is a clean Bartlein barrel, And what I'll do is continue to do this until I don't see copper in it any longer, or carbon rather, sorry. So I don't see any more of that black. Once I get through that, then I'll go to the next step. All right, guys, so I know someone's gonna call me out on it. It's just something that I don't do. A lot of people will insert their jag here, and then they'll use this port here and add a little bit of solvent. I just don't like that. I don't feel like I get uniform coverage throughout the patch. This is about the 7th patch, and what you'll see is we are completely clean with carbon. We're not seeing any more black here, okay? So that's pretty much a clean patch. And now this is where you're gonna get some differing opinions, because a lot of people say, don't use a copper brush. Don't use a brush at all, it's bad on the chamber. Now you gotta remember, you're dealing with a steel barrel here, and I'm using copper bristles. Okay, it is much softer than the actual barrel itself. So, you know, I don't really subscribe to that, but I don't overly use this. Now, the bore is still wet with hoppies in it. So I'm gonna press through. Always go from the breech to the muzzle. Don't ever push back towards your action, because you're gonna be introducing a lot of dirt and stuff into the chamber, the carbon, or anything that you break free from there. So this is 2 presses with a brand new jag. Now what I'd like for you to notice here is, well, my jag rolled under my table. What you're gonna notice here is it was clean. There was no copper, or there was no carbon whatsoever. I ran the bronze brush through there twice, that's it. And I removed it every time, never want to reverse the jag. I'm gonna put the hoppies on here again. And what I want you to notice is when I push this through here, how much carbon we broke up. So it was a clean bore, 2 presses with a brand new out of the box bronze brush, and that broke that away. So I do subscribe to bronze brushes. I like to use them. I'll do this just a few times. I don't get excessive with it, and you never reverse the direction on it. All right, guys, so now that I have done that a couple of times, I've ran the bronze brush through it another 2 times, got all the loose carbon out that I could find. Then you use a dry patch and run it through the bore. That way you remove all of the chemicals that are in there. Some guys, you know, will use something like brake parts cleaner or something like that to quote unquote neutralize it. But as long as you dry it out, I think you're good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use something that's going to break down the copper. Now hoppies does break down the copper a little bit, but it's not going to work as well as like this Bortec. Now the Bortec CU+3, a lot of bench rest guys use this. It's good stuff. It was clear. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push this through here very slowly, and you're going to notice that there is pretty much nothing on this. It usually breaks apart a little more carbon filing, but I'm going to let that sit in the barrel for about 5 minutes or so. And then when I pick up in just a few minutes, or in just a second, it will be 5 minutes elapsed time, and we'll see what that patch looks like. All right, guys, so it's 5 minutes later. I'm using the Bortec CU+3 fresh patch. Let's see what happens now. Now when I press this through, what I want you guys to notice, if you guys can see this on video, you see that blue? That's bad. Blue equals bad. Blue reacts, basically this solvent, the Bortec, just like sweets, reacts with copper. Anytime it reacts with copper and it starts to break it down, it will turn the patch blue. So that is going to be what I need to get out of the barrel in order to get maximum peak accuracy out of this barrel. You want to always have that copper out of there, because every time you fire around, it's laying a track of copper in there. Now, some hold copper a lot worse than others, but most of your higher quality barrels, I shouldn't have to do this, but maybe 4 or 5 patches, let it sit, and I can get that copper out of there. But hopefully that explains a little bit. We'll pick up in just a second. All right, guys, so after running some more of the Bortec through there, about 4 or 5 more patches, there was no more hint of blue, so that means the copper was removed. Now, you always want to finish out with a dry patch, and so now I'm going to introduce hoppies back through there, and you should hear, that's what I call squeaky clean. Okay, so I had no residue or anything like that on that with the hoppies. So now I'm going to run a dry patch through there to get the hoppies out, and that is what I consider clean. So now we've taken care of the barrel. What I want to take care of next is going to be the chamber. So you can get a chamber cleaning brush that looks like this. Now don't laugh at this one. This one's got some wear on it, but it is for a 308. It's got stainless here, but this is going to be brass. Now what I usually do is I will take a cleaning patch and I will wrap it around this like that. Once I do that, then I put some hoppies on there. That way it'll kind of catch the residue. And then what I'm going to do is insert it in here and then turn it. Now as I turn it through there, what I'm doing is basically cleaning out that chamber area, catching the residue. And when I pull this out, even though it was a clean bore, what you're going to see is all of this nastiness that I'm taking out of there. So that's how I finish up, and then what I'll do is I will show you a video of how everything looks now. All right, guys, so I'm using the video borescope here. Hopefully you can see that. I mean, that right there looks like a freshly machined surface. I mean, look at that. There is no residue in there, hardly at all. Now, we can see some fibers there from the cleaning, but what you're going to see there is that everything is nice and clean. There are no tracks of copper in there. I don't see any carbon, and that's it. All right, guys, so here's some of that red grease. I didn't cut myself or anything, and I will just put a little bit or a dab of it on those high spots. I'll get a little bit in that area there, and then on the back side of the lugs, you're going to see how those are machined. Now this is a custom Stiller Precision with a Bartlein barrel, so it has been squared up. It's been blueprinted. I mean, this rifle drives tacks, absolute tacks. But I'm just putting a light coat of grease on here, nothing to, catch a lot of debris that might be blown up. And then just a little bit on the bolt face. This one's got a fluted bolt, so not on the bolt face, sorry. Do not put any on the bolt face. And then now I'm going to reinsert it into the action, and that right there is as smooth as butter, okay? Another thing is anytime, it doesn't hurt to dry fire these rifles. However, anytime I'm putting up for storage or something like that, and you guys probably know this, whenever you close your bolt, you can go ahead and pull the trigger, and that just lowers the firing pin down rather than doing this and then firing it, okay? I try not to do that because these have really light triggers in them, but that's a little trick. Basically, you just push it in, hold the trigger, and it just releases it slowly rather than snapping it on the firing pin. All right, guys, so I hope you learned a little bit about how to clean your precision bolt gun. Like I said, I'm not going to get in an argument with anyone on which way is better. This is just the way that I do it. It's worked for me for many, many years. I've never had any issues with barrels or damage to barrels, and I do it the same way each and every time. It doesn't matter if it's, like that Accuracy International. I mean, that's, a $7,000 rifle. It's just I use the exact same cleaning regimen, okay? There's no difference, and as long as you do that and stay on top of the carbon and stay on top of the carbon or the copper, you'll be okay. Now, with that being said, some guys are going to say, well, you didn't put any oil in that barrel. If this rifle was going to get stored in my safe for any amount of time, and when I say any amount of time, I mean if it's going to be in there for more than a couple weeks, I will probably run a dry patch or a clean dry patch, spray a little bit of oil on it, something light like rim oil or something like that, and I will run that patch through the barrel. However, I do not want to make that my first shot at a competition. Okay, think of it as being on ice. You'll never be able to duplicate how slick that barrel is based on how much oil you put on it with that patch. So you might want to do a fouler round or something to foul the barrel for the first shot before you actually have a competition or something like that where that first shot is very critical. Now, most snipers run a fouled barrel, so once you foul it, it's okay. You got to be careful with that. Don't foul a barrel and leave it stored up for a couple months, because that carbon in the barrel will attract moisture, and then that's going to increase the likelihood of getting some some rust buildup or something like that in it. But typically, we're shooting fouled barrels, not clean cold bores, because that first shot counts. You can't say, hey, wait a minute, let me burn one into the berm over here before I take that critical shot or whatever. So guys, I hope you learned something from this. It's just a quick down and dirty how I clean precision bolt guns. Hope you have a great evening. Thanks for joining.